Spoilers for Deltarune chapters 1 through 4. Hey! Yes, this is just an excuse to talk about Deltarune, why do you ask? Deltarune, the something to Undertale. I'm not entirely clear on what that is yet, but it's something Undertale. Recently, after 3 years, chapters 3 and 4 came out, and they blew my expectations out of the water. The story, the characters, the music, it was all incredible. And perhaps the most incredible of all, the bosses. So many of them in the new chapters were absolutely amazing, and since I'm currently obsessed with Deltarune and want to talk about it on my channel, I figured, what the hell, I might as well rank every boss. Now, deciding what was a boss was actually harder than expected. A lot of them aren't as cut and dry as you might think, and during the writing of this video I went back and forth on which one should count several times. I'm not going to waste your time with what my thought process was, I'll just tell you what I decided on. I decided to exclude the tutorial fight with Lancer, the Lancer fight with Susie, the one in the castle, not the one where they work together, the arcade machine, mouse wheel, wire, Shutta, and the water cooler. Every other fight that might even slightly be considered a boss is probably on this list, and if it's not, it probably would have ranked it last anyway. Now, with all that out of the way, let's go on to our number 24 spot, the worst boss in the game. 24. Sweet Cap'n Cakes. Now this one, as with a lot of our bottom slots, probably shouldn't count. It's less a boss and more a tutorial for Susie and Rouse acting. In chapter 1, only Chris could act, so for chapter 2 they added in a fight to teach S and R action to your other party members. This means that you can't actually win the fight in a quick way. It's pretty much always going to end in 5 turns. You dance with one of them, they stop dancing, and so on until the game says you've done enough and lets you move on. It's not bad, but on repeat playthroughs it does sort of become grating. Also, this might just be a me problem, but I really don't like these characters. They're the only characters in both Undertale and Deltarune who I feel like are less funny than they were intended to be. Still, this fight isn't all bad. It's necessary, and the conclusion cutscene with everyone dancing together put a huge smile on my face the first time I saw it. However, for being more of a cutscene than a fight, it's clear it has to rank down here. 23. Holy Water Cooler. Now, I know what you're thinking. Didn't you say you weren't including the water cooler? Yeah, idiot, this is clearly the holy water cooler, keep up. I think of all the ones I decided to include, this one is pushing the line the most. In the first part, its attacks are identical to the normal water cooler, which as stated isn't a boss. But don't worry, it has a phase shift where it turns into a different normal enemy. Some of you may be asking why this counts if it's just 2 regular fights. Well, the circumstances are just different enough from regular fights for me to accept it. You fight this at the top of a big tower, and it's a required fight to get the secret boss of chapter 4. I kinda consider this like a mini boss of sorts, since it's a unique enemy. Well, I mean, not really, it reuses attacks, but still. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear why this ranks down here. It's basically just 2 regular enemies slapped together. However, some of you may be wondering why it's not dead last. Well, put simply, you have more control. Sweet Cap'n Cakes is essentially a cutscene, while in this fight you actually get to control how long it goes. It's not much, but it's not last, so you're welcome, Holy Water Cooler fans. 22. Clover. As the earliest boss on this list, it makes sense that Clover ranks fairly low. There isn't really much to say. Killing it takes like 3 turns, and sparing it is similarly pretty simple, just requiring you to talk about things that Clover likes. Its attack patterns are incredibly simple, even by chapter 1 standards, and overall it's just nothing special. The thing saving this fight for me is Clover. Clover has 3 heads and they're all constantly arguing with themselves. It's not super unique, but it's a fun archetype regardless. That's all. What? What else do you want me to say? It's from chapter 1, it's bound to be pretty simple. 21. Lancer and Susie. Speaking of simple chapter 1 fights, here's Lancer and Susie. Now the premise of this fight is cool. I love Lancer and Susie's dynamic, and I'd love to see them work together on attacks. Instead I got 1 attack and a bunch of separation. Yeah, I think this fight, more than any other, suffers from being in chapter 1. The concept is great, but there's only a singular attack where they work together. The rest of the fight is them taking turns. Additionally, sparing involves putting Susie to sleep, which means most of the fight is identical to the Lancer tutorial battle, a fight so unnoteworthy that I didn't even include it on the list. I don't want to make it sound like I hate this fight, because I don't. I just wanted more from it. The dialogue is great, the concept of just convincing Lancer not to fight is really funny and in character. There's a lot of solid ideas at play here, it just doesn't come together in the gameplay. 20. Task Manager. This is the other one along with the Holy Water Cooler that probably shouldn't count for this list. Most would just say they're an enemy, but I wanted to include it, okay? First off, this fight is actually entirely avoidable. There's these portraits before it, which if you answer the questions about them correctly, then you'll recruit Task Manager free of charge. This is a really fun way to handle it and boosts her up a lot. If you choose not to answer the questions or get one wrong, then the fight itself is just alright. She has this gimmick where she zaps certain letters and you have to move to where she says, which isn't too interesting, but combined with bullets from other enemies, it can actually get pretty intense. Since this boss is, let's be honest, basically just a regular fight, it's pretty short and uneventful. Some might even say it doesn't belong on a list like this. But they're just mean. 19. Rules. Chapter 2. Okay, something you're gonna learn about me throughout this list is that I love gimmicks. Don't get me wrong, the core gameplay of Deltarune is great, but mixing it up every once in a while, that's where the good stuff is. With that said, this gimmick kinda sucks, and not even for the reason you might think. The whole point of this fight is to capture more houses than rules. I really only have one complaint with this fight, and that's that it's way too easy. If you choose to always capture 4 houses and make a beeline straight to cutting him off, you can finish in like 3 turns. I'm not saying every boss needs to be a super hard challenge, it's just that this fight will immediately end once he can't capture any houses, so you barely see any of his attacks. The concept of playing a game where you capture houses is fun, I just wish it were a bit longer. Maybe if the board design didn't trap him in the corner at the start, it could have worked better. As it is now, I barely even remember this fight exists. 18. Does this thing have a name, or... Okay, I guess. 18. Question mark, question mark, question mark. This is the statue fight that happens in Susie's Dark World. Its gameplay is similar to the Chapter 4 secret boss, which we'll see much later, since it's supposed to trick you into thinking it is him. Only problem is it's way worse. Honestly, the story and atmosphere of this fight are its biggest strengths. Fighting who you think is an ally, attacking you for no reason, bathed in darkness so you can't see anything, is really cool, and Raza coming in to just kill it at the end is super interesting. It also leads to one of the best scenes in the game, but that's not the boss, so I digress. The only thing I dislike about this fight is its gameplay. Not that it's bad, again the whole fight being dark is a creative gimmick, but most of the attacks boil down to Simon Says. I'm like, look at this.
Left, right. Left, right.
I can't in good conscience place this any higher. This is the first fight with a pretty exceptional story though, so for that I had to give it props. 17. K-Round 1 and 2. Yeah, I decided to combine both K-Round fights into one entry. Originally I had them split up, but once I finished outlining the ranking I realized that both of them landed right next to each other, so what's the point? Anyway, as another Chapter 1 fight, it's pretty basic attacks wise. The most interesting one is probably the stomp where he shoots stars out, but even that is not super crazy. I do like that he will constantly heal himself, forcing you to use axe instead of violence. It's not the only fight to do that, Sweet Cap and Cakes did it too, but I like it more here. In that fight, it was mostly just for tutorial's sake, where here it services the story. After you fight K-Round the first time, Susie leaves the party, and when she joins back and starts to accept your axe, then you fight him again. It's meant to show Susie's evolution as a character, from someone who just attacks blindly to someone who actually comes up with a way to beat K-Round without violence. Well, at least without violence towards K-Round. The design of a checker piece with these just impeccable legs is obviously very funny, but besides that, the fight is just okay. It serves its purpose well and is decently fun, though can go by very quickly if you know what you're doing. 16. Elnina and Lenino. Finally, a Chapter 3 fight. Sorry, slight spoilers for the list, but there's still 5 Chapter 3 fights to talk about, 5 Chapter 2 fights, and 4 Chapter 4 fights. Wanna know how many Chapter 1 fights are left on the list? 2. See what I mean about Chapter 1 being lackluster? Anyway, sorry, Elnina and Lenino. To be honest, their fight is hard carried by charm. The actual attacks, there's really only 3 and they happen sequentially. Like, they repeat one attack until you get to a certain point in the fight, then repeat the next attack, and then there's a final attack. For how long this fight goes on, especially if you're not acting, 3 attacks is a bit disappointing. However, the story of this fight is pretty good. It starts with the 2 doing their attacks together, but about halfway through you get asked whose attack you like more. Depending on who you pick, they'll begin to get an ego and overtake the attacks, eventually causing the other to leave, leaving them alone and leading into their breakup storyline. It's pretty charming, but again, the gameplay is sort of lackluster. This is also another fight on a soft timer since it needs to play out their whole storyline before you can move on. This might sound like I'm more negative on this fight than a lot of the ones I talked about earlier, so some of you might be confused why this isn't lower. Well, put simply, it's a part of Chapter 3. Even the worst Chapter 3 fight is better than most Chapter 1 fights, at least in my opinion. I'm just realizing how much I'm dunking on Chapter 1 this video. I still like Chapter 1, I promise, I just think it's lacking in the boss department, that's all. 15. Spamton. Here's a fun one. Spamton is such a weird encounter your first time through. Like, Chapter 2 has been out for almost 4 years now, so we've become desensitized, but Spamton really is a little freak. He just randomly appears from this dumpster and does this. Anyway, the fight itself is pretty creative. There's not much variety in attacks, my favorite is probably the one where he shoots little Spamtons out of his mouth, but for a mini-boss sort of deal, that's not a huge deal. I do enjoy how to spare and you have to answer questions correctly, that's fun, and because he's such a cryptic character, it's genuinely hard to tell what the correct option is most of the time. Still, this fight isn't that interesting, and goes on just a bit too long for how many attacks he has. But still, not bad. Here on the list is where we're getting to the good stuff. 14. Birdly 1 and 2. Yeah, like K-Round, I decided to combine both of Birdly's fights, since they're pretty similar. The most that changes is your party members, but that doesn't really matter. This fight I really don't have much to say about. Birdly as a character is very fun, but not especially for these fights. His attack patterns are good, but this is Deltarune. Every attack pattern is good in this game. This is really the cutoff point where we go from the good bosses to the excellent ones. Every boss after this is incredible in my opinion, and I have very few problems with them. As for Birdly, Yeah, like I said, I have nothing to say. Good fight, that's all. Also, his battle theme is strangely fire for such a nerdy character. "13. King. Yep, the first final boss to show up on the list. Who would have guessed it's Chapter 1's? Not to say this one is bad, because like I said, this is where the fights get really good. My complaints are going to get really shallow from this point onwards, so don't think these are big critiques. I'm aware they're basically nitpicks. Anyway, King. I actually really like his attack patterns. Even though it's in Chapter 1, you could have probably convinced me this comes from a later chapter with how unique some of them are. King messes with the box a lot, as in the box that attacks take place in. He swings it up and down, he makes it bounce, he drags it along. It's a really interesting thing for a main boss to focus on. That does make the attacks where he isn't focused on it sort of underwhelming. Like, yep, you're the Spade King, so just throw a bunch of spades at us. Don't get me wrong, I like the amount of attack variety here, I just think some of them are pretty basic. Like, any spade-themed normal enemy could have this attack and fit in. It doesn't really feel boss-worthy. Good fight, though. I'm impressed, Chapter 1. Good job. 12. John Mantle. That's his name, don't fact check me on that. Now this fight is by far the most different one in the game. In fact, I initially didn't even have it included since I didn't really know how to judge it, but I figured, why not? I mean, it's clearly a boss, just because it's different gameplay wise doesn't make that any less true. This fight takes place in the big Zelda tribute world, and it's how you get the Shadow Mantle, which helps you defeat a certain boss later on. We'll get to that. Funnily enough, I think this might be the boss I spent the longest on in terms of just trying to beat it. I struggled here for a while, and that's mainly because I'm just not very good at the combat here. You have a sword and it attacks the tile in front of you, meaning you have to reposition yourself a lot just to even hit John. Even after learning the attacks, he's still pretty tricky. The attacks themselves are pretty simple, there's not a ton you can do in the Zelda world, but for what they had to work with, he has a good variety. He even has different phases, which is not really true of many other bosses in Deltarune. One aspect I'm not the biggest fan of is how healing works. One of John's more common attacks is to summon these cat things, and if you kill them, there's a small chance you get a healing item. I don't like how it's based on luck. I mean, the only reason I won my first time was because I got 2 incredibly lucky heals when I needed them most. I wish it was consistent. Either no heals at all, or maybe every 5 kills or so, I don't know. Besides that, this boss was awesome and I'm glad they included it. 11. Rules. Chapter 3. Our last boss before we get to the top 10, and also probably the most gimmicky battle in the game. This fight is mostly about timing. You can only act, and at first it doesn't do anything, but eventually you gain the ability to Lancer. He then starts going across your axe, and you have to time it when you're over it. It starts off pretty easy, but soon changes, eventually introducing rules which you can't hover over. It's pretty fun. I like how by the end it genuinely requires really good reaction time to do it. The attacks you have to dodge are nothing too special, but that doesn't make them bad. I also love the part of the fight where Rules pulls out a laser pointer. That got a good laugh out of me my first time through. Overall, just a fun little minigame to do in between the more traditional fights. It doesn't take itself seriously, and I like that about it. My only complaint is, again, the attacks are not super interesting, but that's not that big of a complaint, all things considered. 10. Spamton Neo. Let me explain. Yes, I know, putting Spamton Neo at only 10th feels like a war crime, but like I said, our top 13 are all really good. Just because it's 10th doesn't mean it's bad, just that there are 9 bosses I like more. For those who only watch my FNAF stuff and don't know what a Deltarune is, the reason this boss is so well regarded is because it's the first secret boss I've covered. Though secret boss isn't really a good name anymore because of a certain someone, so let's go with bonus boss instead. Anyway, a bonus boss upon defeat will give you a shadow crystal and a weapon or armor. There's 1 per chapter and they usually require extra steps to find, which involve going all around the world to find certain things. Again, usually. Chapter 3 made bonus boss discussion really weird. Anyway, this is one of the 4 bonus bosses, and is the bonus boss for Chapter 2. That's right, I think the bonus boss of Chapter 1 is better than Chapter 2's, which is probably my hottest take in the video. More on that in a bit. Anyway, I spent a long time setting up this guy. Why don't I actually talk about him? This is one of 3 fights that changes your soul mode. Basically, when you turn a different color, you have slightly different gameplay. I was kind of hoping every bonus boss would do this, and to be fair, they would have, if it weren't for Chapter 3. This changes you to yellow, allowing you to shoot little shots, and new to Deltarune, big shots as well. While this is fun, yellow has always kind of been my least favorite soul mode. Not that it's bad, it's just kind of awkward for me, at least on keyboard. On controller it's a lot more natural, but on keyboard I struggle quite a lot. However, just because I don't like controlling it doesn't make these attacks any less good. A lot of them are really creative. My favorite is definitely the final one, even if it's very easy. The spectacle is just really cool. I also like the phone attack, especially when it turns out the call is for him and he skips the attack. That's funny. Yeah, for being one of the 4 bonus bosses, I really don't have much to say about it. A solid fight with a good song and creative attacks. Also, before anyone asks, yes, this includes Snowgrave, Spamton Neo. I considered making them separate fights, but all that changes is your party members, so it really isn't different enough. Although I will say the ending segment of the Snowgrave fight is super cool, so that boosted its ranking a tiny bit. 9. Tenna. This fight is cool because it kind of mixes both gimmicks and normal attacks. If you do this fight pacifist, then you choose when minigames happen for points, trying to reach 1,000 to end the fight. If you do genocide, then the minigames start at 50% health. The normal attacks are cool, although there's not many of them, but the minigames are really red shines. It reminds me a lot of WarioWare. You have to quickly do whatever it asks of you on screen. It's a lot of fun, though the final attack might be a bit much. I like it, but also it shifts so quickly between minigames that you basically can't react at all. It's fine for casual players, I guess, but for no-hitters I can imagine it being annoying. Here's the part of the video where I mentioned that I was third in the world to no-hit 10-up, but like, that's not even a big deal. It isn't. I only did it third because I have more free time than most. Anyway, yeah, this fight is really a fun time, and I was honestly surprised when I finished outlining the list and saw it was at 9th. Like, I love this fight. I guess Deltarune just has a lot of great fights. 8. Queen. I really struggled on whether I liked this fight or Tenna's more, but I eventually decided Queen beats Tenna by a hair. And surprisingly, it's not for any real reason. She doesn't have anything that special about her fight besides the acid shield, which is barely notable. Rather, she lands up this high for just having really solid bullet patterns. Seriously, there are so many attacks from her I love, like the drama attack or the ultimate one. It's just fun. I enjoy replaying this fight because the attacks are both difficult and fair. Also, Queen as a character is one of my favorites, which does play into the boss at least a little. Not much more to say. It's a basic but well executed fight. 7. Jevil. Here's the chapter 1 bonus boss, the one that I think is better than Spamton Neo. Really, that's only for a couple reasons. First off, I like how you stay red the entire fight. I like soul color changes, but I prefer standard red over yellow. Secondly, I enjoy the bullet patterns. This is kind of a basic compliment, but for a chapter 1 fight, a lot of these are really cool. I enjoy his focus on different card suits, and I think attacks like the Devil's Knife or his final one are some of the coolest in the game. Finally, I think this fight is the perfect difficulty. On my most recent playthrough, at least at the time of writing this, I played this game so much that probably won't be true soon, I ended up no-hitting Spamton Neo on my first try. Meanwhile, Jevil I actually ended up dying to. Now granted, I was playing on console, which I'm not used to, and I refused to use any healing items, but still, I died. And that's something that doesn't happen enough in Deltarune. So yeah, while I can see why some people would prefer Spamton Neo for being more unique and for having a cooler character, Jevil just barely beats Spamton out in my opinion. Final note about this boss, but oh my god, the world revolving is a banger. Seriously, besides Dark Sanctuary or Never Ending Night from chapter 4, the world revolving is my favorite Deltarune track of all time. It's so high energy and fun. And that's our last chapter 1 fight. Unsurprising that it's the first chapter to be finished considering it's the first and most primitive, but 7th is nothing to be upset over. 6. The Roaring Knight. Here's the little troublemaker. The bonus boss of chapter 3 also doubles as the main boss of literally the entire game. At the end of chapter 3, you fight this guy, and the idea is that you're supposed to lose. However, the bonus part comes in if you fought against John Mantle earlier. If you did, you get the Shadow Mantle, which makes the fight slightly easier. Technically you can win without it, but you basically have to no-hit at that point. With the Shadow Mantle equipped, you can at least take some damage, though it's not much help. Yeah, this boss is by far the hardest in Deltarune. So hard that even as I write this, I have yet to no-hit it. In fact, I haven't even gotten close. There's just too many attacks that I struggle with. I love this fight a lot. Its attacks are incredibly unique. Okay, well besides that one. And that. Okay, fine, there's some attacks that are similar to past ones, but honestly I don't really mind. It's not like they're directly ripped from past fights, they have their own style. Plus, a lot of them are unique, my favorite being the one where the swords come at you from different angles. It always feels so satisfying to dodge. So this fight is really hard and has great attacks. What's the downside? Well, I have to say I don't like it very much as a bonus boss. Like I said, this one breaks conventions too much to really be all that satisfying. When I got the Shadow Crystal in other chapters, it felt like a journey, like I had accomplished something. Here, while I did accomplish something, beating the fight is definitely an accomplishment, it doesn't feel the same. There's also the issue of this fight being in the red soul mode, which again I was hoping wasn't the case, but oh well. Overall, I'm still placing this at 6, because I like the fight. I can talk about what it could have done all day, but that doesn't mean what it did do isn't any less good. And now we're on to the top 5. A little recap before we go. I've covered every chapter 1 fight, and I just covered the last chapter 3 fight. There's one chapter 2 fight left, meaning 4 of the top 5 are chapter 4 fights. What can I say, it has good bosses. 5. Titan. I gotta say, I was not expecting to fight a Titan in chapter 4, but alright. This fight is interesting, since you have to get 80 TP before you can even attack it. To balance this, you don't get much TP for defending or attacking, you instead have to earn it through the attacks. This makes a fun challenge where you're not only trying to dodge the attacks, but earn TP from them too to speed up the fight. It's fun, although a way to cheese it is just to use tension items, since those give you TP no matter what. I kinda wish they could have found a way to balance it, because the tension items are kind of useless in regular fights, so by the time the player gets to the Titan, they're likely to have a few, which makes the process of beating it way easier. Not a huge problem, you gain TP from attacks pretty fast, so it'll only save you a couple of turns, but I still wish it weren't a factor. Besides that, this boss is great. The attacks are good, though I kinda wish there were a few more since they repeat quite often. The spectacle is great, and the ending to the fight where the old man shows up with that amazing song playing. It's one of the best moments in Deltarune, and I'm honestly curious how it's going to be topped in Chapter 7, assuming they want an epic finale. Solid fight with a unique gimmick. I like it. 4. Giga Queen. Our last Chapter 2 fight, and oh man is it a good one. So early in the chapter, you do a little arcade fight with Queen, which is a Punch-Out parody. It's fun, but super basic and easy, as is to be expected from a minigame distraction. What I don't think anyone was expecting was for the final boss of the chapter to be a Punch-Out fight too. I remember playing Chapter 2 when it released, staying up super late to finish the chapter, and when I got to this part and realized what it was, I had the biggest smile on my face. I'm a huge Punch-Out fan, so getting to do it as the final boss of the chapter was genuinely incredible. And even better, the fight is massively improved from before. During the arcade machine, you kind of just dodged, punched twice, dodged, punched twice. It was cool, but very simple. Here there are tons of attacks that are genuinely really difficult. I always get tripped up by this one. Having to dodge in a specific direction really quickly always confuses me. I have no-hit this fight, but I never uploaded it, mostly because I just did it for myself. This fight is fun, was a massive surprise, and it's probably the hardest I've smiled playing Deltarune. So, why isn't it even higher? I genuinely don't know. I just think the final 3 fights are somehow even better. Sure, I was probably most pleased by this one, but thinking about it, I think these last 3 fights are just a tiny bit better. But really, only a tiny bit. You could shift around the order of these top 4 and I wouldn't disagree with you at all. Now, onto the dumbest fight in the game, one no one, not even myself, thought would rank this high. Number 3 is Jackenstein. Now my reasoning for these bosses takes a lot into consideration. Is it fun? Do I like the character? Etc, etc. Jackenstein is up here for one reason, and that's that it's really funny. Like, this fight kills me every time I play, and I don't see that ever changing. Not to say the boss only has comedy, because it's fun in its own right. It has the same gimmick as the Titan, where TP gain is reduced, and you have to gain it through attacks. This does mean tension items can still cheese it, but I don't mind as much because this fight isn't as important. If a player wants to cheat through it, go ahead. You have to go through a maze and collect a key, then escape, collecting dots on the way to fill TP. The biggest thing that throws a wrench in that is... That's right, if you take too long, or if you collect the key and head to a certain area it's not actually based on time taken, but shh, then a giant pumpkin will yell at you and chase you out. I'm gonna be real, this scared me really badly my first time through. But as the fight goes on, it uses it less as an attack and more just to make jokes. Like the classic... Or my personal favorite... Going online, I saw a lot of hate for this fight when the chapter released, people saying it was just too gimmicky or whatever, but I think those people lack joy and whimsy. This fight is incredible and no one can convince me otherwise. Now onto the completely expected number 2 slot. 2. Old Man. Everyone loves this fight, and for good reason. It's our final bonus boss and is probably also the most lighthearted. The rest are fights for your life, where this one is just a friendly spar between 2 people. The Old Man is one of my favorite Deltarune characters, especially because of his interactions with Susie, so a whole fight of them is great. The gameplay also changes things up, using the green soul like his statue fight did earlier. Except unlike that fight, which was mostly Simon Says, this one actually has gameplay. There's so much in this fight. It starts like Undyne and Undertale, but then it introduces diagonal arrows and shells and attacks outside of the green soul, and it's all just a lot. In the best way, of course. I think this is my favorite fight purely just gameplay wise. I've replayed him a ton because it's just a lot of fun. Also, I will never get a chance to talk about this again, so let me tell you a story really quick. I spent like 2 hours trying to no-hit this fight, couldn't do it mainly because of this stupid hammer attack that he does twice throughout the fight. So I went to bed, woke up the next day at like 5 AM, immediately no-hit him first try, then went right back to bed. It was great. Then, like the next day I was showing my dad the fight because I'm one of those weirdos who shows their parents Deltarune fights instead of moving out, and I somehow no-hit him again first try. This means I technically did the fight no-hit twice in a row, just with like a lot of time in between the 2 attempts. Anyway, yeah, this fight is really something special. It's lighthearted, interesting, and most of all, it's just fun. But it's not number 1. Because number 1 is somehow even better. It may not have better gameplay than the Old Man, but it somehow does something more. Yikes, that's right. Our number 1 slot is the 3, the only 1. Mike. This fight was actually the last boss I fought. I decided to make this video, then realized I hadn't fought Mike yet, so did that, and almost immediately I decided that it was first place. First off, I'm covering the Steam version of this fight. This is because it's different on different consoles, and the Steam version is the one I played. Sorry I didn't buy a Switch 2 for this video, I failed you guys. Anyway, because this fight is exclusive to computers, they decided to go all out on gimmicks. This fight not only uses the mouse, but microphone controls too. I was so happy when I realized this. Like I said, gimmicks are my forte, so I was down for some dumb bullshit. Now, I can't speak for everyone. From what I've heard, there's pretty mixed reception for this fight, but me personally, the controls actually work great. Like, better than I expected. The one issue I had was the few times the microphone heard my mouse, but I could have easily fixed that and I just didn't, so I won't hold it against this fight. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff to do here. You have to use mic controls to go up and down and dodge things, then you have to pet cats with the mouse, then you have to go side to side, then they start combining everything, and that's when it gets insane. I'm particularly fond of the final attack, where you have to pet the two cats on the side while also petting the mic ball. This fight just has so many ideas, and while it may not work for everyone, I think that just makes it more special for the people it does work for. But that's not really why I love this fight so much. No, for that, let's talk about Mike. Mike was mentioned, I think maybe twice in chapter 2, and that's it. Like, it was really minimal. But of course, give people 3 years to talk about a chapter, they'll talk about everything. So there was a lot of theories on who this Mike was, and whether we would see him or not. The 3 biggest theories on what he was were a microphone, cause duh, a cat for reasons I'm not clear on, and a cowboy. The less we say about Woody theory, the better. You may be starting to see it, but the reason Mike is 3 people is to pay tribute to these theories. It's pretty clear that Mike was not planned to be an important character, but after seeing the theories people made, Toby Fox wanted to give people something. And that's honestly so cool. A lot of people see this as Toby making fun of theorists, but I don't. I think this is more of a way to pay tribute to these theories, to show that, yeah, we were all wrong, but that he sees and respects our theories. I mean, the cowboy one literally says, I've got friends on the inside, and Woody Theory's whole thing was friend inside me, so it doesn't get much more blatant than that. I think seeing this fight kind of reminded me of why I love indie games so much, and that's that it's inherently a smaller team, meaning they're more likely to have full creative control over a project. You would never see a fan theory pay tribute to in the newest Mario game, because that's just not really a thing Nintendo would be interested in doing. With indie games, there's a sense of community, and it's more likely that the developers will see what's going on and communicate about it. And that's why this fight lands at first, because of what it represents. But we're not quite done yet. Yes, that's every entry on the list, but I wanted to also get the averages for each chapter, you know, to see which chapter is the best and worst fights. Coming in at last with an average placement of 16 is unsurprisingly chapter 1. I like chapter 1 a lot, but Toby Fox was still figuring things out evidently. Its lowest placement was Clover at 22nd, and its highest placement was Jevil at 7th. Not bad, but obviously could be better. Next, with an average list placement of 14.25, we have Chapter 2. If I had to guess, I'd say the sheer amount of bosses here did it kind of a disservice. It had the most at 8, meaning a lot were mediocre. It also definitely didn't help having the lowest ranking fight in all of Deltarune with Sweet Cap and Cakes at 24th. Its highest rank was Giga Queen at 4th. Up next is unsurprisingly Chapter 3 with an average list placement of 10.8. It didn't have many bosses, but the ones it had were damn good. It also had the lowest amount of list placements in the bottom half of the list, with only Almina and Lenino. Every other fight ranked in the top 12, with its highest rank being the Roaring Knight at 6th. But to nobody's surprise, our highest ranked chapter is Chapter 4, with an average list placement of 8.667. I mean, we all saw this coming, right? It basically comprised the entire top 5, with only the Holy Water Cooler really dragging it down at 23rd, and that barely counts as a boss. So yeah, every chapter just gets better and better with bosses, at least in my opinion. With that, I'm ready to wrap this up. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry I didn't upload for like 2 months, no real reason, I just didn't have good ideas or motivation. But I'm back and hopefully I won't take as long to upload again. No promises though. If you like this video, honestly you don't have to do anything, your watch time making it this far is enough, but I know that's not the right YouTuber thing to say, so I'll ask that you subscribe and like and all that jazz. Until next time, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye!
Inside me.